Welcome to Iris Cottage. I'm Suzanne Miner of Quirky SuZ Designs. I'm the SuZ, and this is my studio. Here I have the opportunity to make jewelry, play with dolls, create paper dolls, do sewing projects, just a wonderful array of things, and I have a wonderful space in which to do them. Welcome to Iris Cottage in the evening. First thing in the door, I have to take off the outside shoes and put on the inside shoes. We're going to start and just go around the cottage and show you some of the relevant details. And we'll make it a leisurely journey. So as we come in the door and turn to the right, this is the Quirky SuZ side, the jewelry side of the studio. I used to make all of my jewelry in a loft that is 6 feet by 10 feet, and the only part you can stand up in is the edge towards the center of the house. So you can imagine how indulgent this feels to me. So I have my beads on shelves, and above I have some of the other things that I work with. And yes, I have to use a stepladder to get to those, but I have one handy at all times. And I try to remember to put it back so that I know where it is when I need to put things back up. But that was a trade-off that I had to make. To be able to get all of these shelves, still be able to have my window clear so that I can enjoy the natural light. It's nice to have the pegboard wall for my tools. I did have a pegboard wall inside the house, but it wasn't very tall, and so it was stretched out. Having more shelves allowed me to organize things a little bit better in terms of categories. And it's kind of funny because now I'm going, how did I ever make it through with just that little bit of room that I had for so long? So I'm one of those artists who is a very visual person, and I need to have things out where I can see them, or they basically do not exist. So over the years, I've put together these clear acrylic boxes, and then I have nice labels on them so I know what's in there, and that way I know where everything is. It's still taking me a little while to get used to it, but it will get better quickly, I'm sure. One of my other saving strategies is that I use a bunch of cookie jars for things, and I also use 3-ring binders. So these 3-ring binders have clasps in them, and then I have a couple of them with record-keeping stuff. But I put the clasps into baseball card pages, and it really makes them easy to access. This cabinet is a record holder from Ray's parents' house. It is one of the few places where I have actual enclosed storage. In here, I keep projects that are planned and in progress. And then I also have some of my tools like the drill and the Dremel and so on. The only piece of furniture that was purchased brand new for this project is this work table. It is 4 feet long, and that is a great size for me, and it gives me room to walk around. It also allows me to stand up when I'm working on a project and look at things from different angles, which is something I could not do in the loft. So this stuff is like a jumble drawer for a jewelry maker. So I have the things that I know they have a place, but I just haven't put them there yet. And I know that because they have inventory numbers on them. And then the other containers are what I sometimes call bead soup, but they're leftovers, things that had fallen on the floor and gotten swept back up, or maybe it's not a perfectly round bead, and what the project I was working on, I really wanted them to be completely round. So this gives me just a little jumble pile I can choose from every now and then, and it's quite handy. And then below that, I have some of my cleaning products and some of the other necessities of life in the workshop. Moving on, I have a few things from friends, like the little box there in the windowsill from my friend Sarah Russell. The curtains are made from some fabric that I had left and some trims that I had. I have no idea how old they are, but I still have them. Anyone who has ever been in a flea market with me knows it's hard for me to avoid jars of buttons. I always have to take a look and see what little treasures might be inside. And I use those in jewelry. And I purchase other buttons, not necessarily in jars. And I hope to incorporate more of them as time goes on here and as I get more comfortable working in my studio. Underneath, I have a whole bunch of fibers that I have purchased for various projects. So this necklace is an example of something that I use these fibers for. This is a mixture of silk and linen, and I'm not sure what else might be in there, but I twisted them together to make the cord. So I have my cord working materials here. So I have all of my photo stuff easily accessible for the first time ever. The backdrop is some textured wallpaper that I got and painted into different colors so that I have backdrops for various purposes. The little girls standing there are one of my projects from the past that I am reconstituting and have gotten ready to sell the kits, and I have created the pattern in a manner that can be sold as well. The other thing that is part of the jewelry photography is my cabinet with birds. Now we're overhead looking at what I call the loft. I was going to continue the 12-inch wide shelves all the way around, and I realized that if I went ahead and did some that were 24 inches wide on either end, I could increase my storage capacity. So this end is mainly things for display, and also if I'm doing a craft show, this is a lot of the display items and the decorations for a crafts booth. I don't have room in here for the furniture, so it's in the barn. The other amazing feature down here is my incredible chandelier. When I bought this cottage, which is a 12 by 24 foot Dirksen building, which is done metal over wood, I knew that when I did the inside of it, this was going to be my space, and I wanted it to be a little bit prettier. I still wanted to go ahead and use galvanized metal for the ceiling because it's nice and reflective and relatively inexpensive and relatively easier to install. But one of the things I knew I was going to have was a crystal chandelier. And I happen to have two of them that my friend Nellie had given to me years ago, that either she or her folks had found them at a yard sale. And I had kept them around. One of them was hanging up in what we call the Hill House, which is Ray's parents' house. And I had it put up over the dining room table. So I took it down. And for this one, I painted the chandelier with a kind of a coppery rose gold paint. I did a rehang on the chandelier crystals, got them all cleaned up and have them hanging from copper and kind of a turquoise blue jump rings. And then the kind of the candle holder part, those were a plastic that was completely worn out. So I replaced that with PVC pipe that I painted and then found these cool new bulbs to put in. The rosette was just a plain white rosette, and I jazzed it up with some paint. And then my darling Raymond made me some beads to hang on it. So the only set of Quirky SuZ and Cool Ray chandeliers in existence. I think it is just beautiful. It just makes me happy to look at it, makes me happy to sit underneath it and work. In the corner behind the chandelier are some other props for photographs and also possibly for display here in the cottage. But I have them up, they're out of the way, but they're also accessible if I need them. I call this Iris Cottage because irises are one of my favorite flowers, and also because of the irises that are planted right in front of it. I have 3 beautiful groups of iris outside, and in years to come, I hope I will have more. The purple iris fan in the middle there is a night light that was made for me by Ray's dad. He did some beautiful stained glass, and he asked me what I wanted, and I said I wanted an iris, and I got one. The colorful picture of birds and irises is embroidery work that my sister found in a flea market somewhere. And then beside it is a picture of irises that used to hang in our family home in Kansas. I'm sure that Mother found them at an auction somewhere, and I was able to get a hold of them some time back, and they fit perfectly into my theme of Iris Cottage. The counter is a piece of wood that I got 16 inches wide, and then I stained it with a mixture of white paint, a little bit of blue paint, and some clear sealant. And people kept saying, oh, it's a workbench. And I said, oh no, it's a display counter. And that is what I wanted, is a display counter where I could put some of my jewelry on easels and have it available for people to look at, including me. And also that underneath is where I would keep some of my other materials and supplies. The daffodil picture came with the iris picture from the same sale or auction, so I got it as well. I get to display some of my china collection and hopefully creating some beautiful jewelry that looks good with it, or perhaps inspired by it. That stack is stuff that I am listing for sale. And then one of my favorite necklaces I've ever made. And I wanted to have room to put this bust in here and be able to drape necklaces on it and take pictures with it. And so I was able to do that. Now we're back to another set of storage items. And so I've tried to group things. So we have dull things here, and then some yarn and fiber, and then rubber stamps. And again, everything's labeled so I know what's there. On the wall, we have a few more treasures that I found. The embroidered iris that's still in its embroidery frame and still in progress. I found at a yard sale in Berryville. Then the dandelion picture was painted by one of my former students, and the garland in the box below that was also done by a former student. So it's really nice to be able to have things that have memories tied to them, have special people tied to them. This is from years back, and it's not hard to see that I've had a love for irises for a long, long time. Then we get to the corner where I have some of my paperworking and doll making and knitting things. I have a lot of tape that I use to decorate my boxes for jewelry. And on the shelf, my cookie jars of colored pencils, markers, and crayons. Come a long way since that little girl who had the 8-piece box of crayons and wished for more. I've certainly fulfilled that. And then we come around and we're now facing to the west. And yes, there's another cookie jar with buttons in it. And I was able to bring some of the sewing items from my studio that was up at the Hill House and is now down here. So I can come in here and pull out a sewing machine and get some things done. And so the curtains were the first sewing project in here. So I did recycle some of the decorations from the Hill House. I brought the Singer sewing machine down with me. And then I have my ironing tools. Also recycled are those cubby holders. Have things in there and have works in progress and some things that maybe aren't in progress yet, but that they are planned. Again, if I can't see it, it maybe doesn't exist. Back up top at this end, this is where my sewing stash is. And this trim with the pretty roses on the front is another recycling piece. I took it from a china cabinet that I had made. And there was just enough of it to go around the door and across this shelf. And this is the second chandelier. Same kind of idea. This one I left the old gold that it was. And then I refurbished, and Ray made beads for me, and I added them on. So I have wonderful light at this end as well, and both of them are on dimmers, so if for some reason I want it to be not quite so bright in here, I can take those down a little bit. This dining table and the two green chairs that I have with it are also recycled. I bought this table at a used furniture store. It has 2 more leaves that can go in it. So if I want to have a much larger work surface, I can do that fairly quickly. And I have used these green chairs in a lot of different places, including the Hill House Sewing Studio. So I have already found out that this is a great spot for working on sewing projects. It's also a great spot for working on some of my paper products. Also a good spot and nice light for recording videos, which I have already done. So I'm fulfilling a lot of the dreams and schemes that I had for Iris Cottage. Now underneath this table is one of my, I think, fairly smart pieces of storage. I have this big tub sitting on a moving dolly, and in there I have 3 sewing machines and several other things, and I can just scoot them back under the table and they're out of my way again, but they're really super easy to get to and get plugged in. So our last area of upper shelving is the vinyl that I use in my Silhouette cutting machine for making vinyl signs and various decorations. And then the 2 suitcases on the end have my gift boxes that I pack the jewelry in. So down below we have the yellow dresser with the beautiful iris drawer pulls on it. And this dresser is a reclaimed project, also from my friend Nellie. And it has the tissue paper and bags and bubble wrap and mailing boxes. So that is kind of shipping central right there. And it's nice to have it contained and easily at hand. So as we traveled around the perimeter of Iris Cottage and under the display counter, you probably have noticed the latest sewing project in the cottage. Oddly enough, fabric I already had. Came out to be the perfect amount. I have created these curtains to, when I choose to conceal what is behind them, I can conceal what is behind them. Now you can see the reason for the curtains. Personally, like I said, I need to have my stuff where I can see it and where I can access it very easily. But I'll admit it does look a bit nicer and calmer with the curtains up. But they are Velcroed underneath, and so they're very easy to put up and take down. and I hang them on the edge of one of the shelves with hooked into skirt hangers. Very handy things. So I can look over here and I can go, okay, I want to work with my colored pencils. And I can pull that cart out and work with my colored pencils. And when I'm finished, it goes right back into play. Then back down here at the jewelry end of the cottage, I have my finished jewelry ready to sell in these cases that I can very easily get to and bring them out for a display or take them out for a sale very, very quickly. So as we look back to the jewelry end of the cottage, you can see where I have the curtains hanging there on the end, and the long fabric hanging beside it is some backdrops that I need to use to do some setups of jewelry so that I can change out some of my graphics on my webpage and my Facebook page and so on. And the desk. I'll bet there are a lot of people who recognize that desk. This is the desk that was mine during my 30 years of teaching high school in Berryville, Arkansas. Every year, just about, I would recover the top, which was badly damaged from age, and I would recover it with contact paper. And that would be the very last thing that I did before I declared my classroom ready to go. So it's not a fancy desk, but it is my desk. And when I peeled off the layers of contact paper, I found that I had an archaeological treasure of the layers of paper that I had put on it through the years. So one of these days, I'll get this framed and hanging up as a souvenir. But I was glad to be able to bring it home with me, and I'm very glad that it is in my cottage as part of my workspace. And now we're back around to the door and the final piece of furniture in the cottage. This is my retirement chair, my rocking chair that was a gift from the school for my 30 years of service. And it's a rather nice chair. And sometimes I take it out onto the little deck and sit and enjoy the outdoors. And sometimes I just sit down in it at the end of the day and say, I'm glad of what I accomplished today. So as I wrap up this tour of Iris Cottage, I'm thankful for the 30 years that I put in, where jewelry and paper dolls were a sideline, to where they are now my full time. And I plan to enjoy them for many, many years. Where's my margarita? I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share Iris Cottage with you. This is going to be a great place to work, hopefully for many, many years to come. And I am thankful to the people who helped me with it. My brother Rodney, my darling Ray, who not only provided beads, he provided physical labor. And all of my friends who said, absolutely, go for it, it's a great idea. You were right, it's a great idea. And I am looking forward to sharing many, many things with you. Bye now.